It's a jumble mess, but it works.
We're here. All right,
Yes.
Welcome back to Gorehead and the Wiener. This is a more chill series on a TV show that Chris and I are working through called Them.
Mm-hmm.
And
chill might not be the most appropriate word for the content.
Oh no, the content is not chill, but the overview, the format of this podcast is a little bit more of just like us summarizing as we're watching through this TV series, which Chris introduced me to, because I guess not many people are talking about it. So figured it would be a good time for us to kind of, dip our toes into the horrors that is Them.
Yeah.
so far.
People can watch along with us episode by episode if they want. So it's just a smaller, not quite as lengthy as some of our other podcasts have been, since we're just talking about one episode of a show. So we'll hopefully be able to do these once a week, so they'll get out a little quicker, so we can, do something a little smaller yet faster.
Yeah, and it's nice to watch through a series because it's a little bit less of a time commitment and it's easier to research each one.
Yeah, I like that as well. Not having to sit down for a day and scour the internet for random interviews.
Yes, but full disclosure for Them, it is a very racially charged TV series. And the horror, I've only watched through one episode so far, but the horror so far has just been very much seated in the racism that the main characters are experiencing throughout the episode so far. And I imagine it just is going to get worse.
Yeah, I know. It'll be hard for me, having watched the whole show, to make sure I don't give too much away on what ends up happening, because I don't want to spoil it for you because it's so friggin' good.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah, but it's definitely the first episode focuses on the external horrors of racism.
Yes, and I actually really like how it's broken up, because they break it up into days, and there's a little intro. I guess we could get into the very, very start of it before we kind of give a little more of a breakdown after they've moved. But the start of the episode takes place in the Deep South, and it takes place in the 50s. And you just see the main character. Her nickname is Lucky, and she has her son Chester, I believe his name is. And he's just a baby. She's feeding him, and she hears someone outside. She goes outside to see who's there, and it's this really creepy looking old white lady.
This actress, she is the perfect racist old white lady actress. Oh. That is her niche, and she is I hope in real life this woman is just a normal. She probably is a normal, really wonderful person. I have to imagine she is a perfectly normal person in real life, because why would you hire someone that horrible to be in that many TV shows? But that's how she's typecast, is white old racist woman, and oh God, does she look the part?
They are exaggerating her features too.
They gave her
into a caricature
and stuff too, because I've seen her in other things, and she has a full set of pearly whites.
Yeah, but so basically this creepy older woman is standing outside of Lucky Emery, her house,
Emery's,
with her kid in there, and she just starts singing this super racist song.
Oh my God.
And I wrote it down. It's called Old Black Joe. And a little bit of history on that song. Was written by Stephen C. Foster, and many of his songs were used in blackface acts and minstrel shows.
Okay.
So you can imagine how horrifying it would be for her to hear that song. And she'd never heard it before, but as soon as this creepy woman just gets into the song, she's like, you need to leave. You need to get out of here.
So uncomfortable. It's just starts singing it so confidently.
Oh God. And the way she exaggerates the word black.
Yeah.
It was just like, what the fuck is this woman's problem?
Yeah, you don't know why she's there, but you feel like it's so the show does such a good job of like just giving like this level of dread that is always there.
Yeah.
And it starts right with that woman, and she sets the tone so
she
well.
Sets it.
Well, and it's really interesting because she is kind of what like stereotypical racist would be. Like you think of a redneck that lives in the South that looks like a hillbilly, and then the show kind of flips the visual idea of what you think a racist person would look like when the show carries on.
100%. Yeah, that's a really good point. I guess, but before we get to that, right before it cuts to the next scene, the woman, the creepy white woman, is like, "Oh, you have a baby. Can I have him? Can I have your child?" And it's just like, what the fuck?
It makes me
Lucky Emery is just like, you need to leave. You need to get the hell out of here. She runs back inside the house, grabs her kid, and then it cuts to her daydreaming in a car with her family, and she now has 2 young daughters and a husband, and they are moving west from the south.
No Chester to speak of.
No Chester in the back seat, just 2 daughters. So we don't know what happened, but it wasn't good. Yeah. So that's the start of the show. And I'm just like immediately hooked, like, holy shit. And it gives you, I guess we did watch His House, and it has a little bit of that, sense of dread with racism. And it just never leaves throughout the whole first episode. You just feel just that sense of horror that you get from horror movies, but it's on a completely different topic that it's not as common in horror movies these days.
I'd say it's more horrifying because all of these things actually happen to people. Like this isn't like some story that someone weaved together of a fictional scenario. It's like, no, this happened. This is one of uncountable stories. And it's just like, oh, okay. It's like this. So your brain, at least for me, makes that switch where it's like, oh, okay, this feels way worse because it's like, I'm sure this exact story didn't happen, but something like it happened
to countless people, and it's still happening to people.
Well, and that's kind of why, because I also was thinking about His House when I was watching it again, and how it's interesting because it is kind of the same, but it's just one's from like a later time period and one's from earlier, and they're both like racism is in both of them, but like it's just one is just so much more oppressive than the other, like and directly confrontational compared to what it was portrayed in His House, where it's like this outside
passive aggressive. In that one,
it's not so passive in this in them.
Oh my god, yeah. So then, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the text that comes on screen.
Yes,
when they're moving. So the setting it's now upbeat after we've cut from this super creepy situation in the South, and Lucky Emery, exactly,
horror cliche number 1, new beginnings. Everything's gonna be better.
But it's them and their family are sitting in their cool 50s car, and her husband Henry, that's his name, I believe. He's driving them, and Lucky is kind of like daydreaming, and she's a little out of it while they're driving up west. But their 2 daughters are in the back seat, and I have to say, like, Gracie, the youngest, she's such a good actress, and she's so cute, especially in this beginning part. Like, she's freaking adorable.
Yeah, she's.
I know it doesn't stay that way, but she.
Cute. She's got the pigtails. She's wearing her little cute dress and just like curious and wide-eyed and happy. Like, I can't wait to go to our new house.
Oh, so excited. Yeah, it's really cute. So basically, new beginnings. They're moving out west, and this text comes on screen, and it says, between 1916 and 1970, approximately 6 million African Americans relocated from rural southern United States to the Northeast, Northwest, and West. widely known as the Great Migration, many Black families were drawn to California by the promise of industrial jobs and a chance to leave the Jim Crow South behind. And I'll just say, Jim Crow laws were state and local laws that were enforced racial segregation in the southern United States. On September 14th, 1953, Henry and Livia Lucky Emery moved their family from Chatham County, North Carolina, to Compton, California. The following occurred over 10 days in the family's new home at 3011 Palmer Drive.
I really love that like setup too, where they because they also have like this very kind of uplifting song playing during the beginning part where the text comes on that's talking about how they all flee, and it seems like, oh, this is going to be better. But then that next bit of text comes on saying like, these events came in the next 10 days. Like, it sounds like one of those like cold case murder documentaries. Like, this is the story of the Emerson family and how they were massacred over the next 10 days. Stay tuned for cold cases. It goes red.
It's so well done though.
It's perfect. It's perfect. You feel like this, like, oh God, what's going to happen to them over the next 10 days?
Stylistically, this show is super gorgeous too. And the way, because it's graphic in like a graphic design sense.
It's really interesting how they do the shots. And because it's really cool because it does kind of look like an old 70s style movie where they do like a lot of those like multiple picture panel shots and the intro itself. The fadeaways, and they do a really good job.
Like the screen like slides in.
The Star Wars wipe that's there. Like they do a great job of recreating the style of kind of a show from that time period. So all of it builds together so nicely to make it feel very in the time or of the time.
And the color red is very prominent throughout the whole show, and it just will cut to red when something either triggers Lucky, and we find out later that she is very traumatized to whatever happened to her in the South. Oh, my iPad thinks I put my hand up. Whenever I use my hands, it's like, oh, you have a question.
So clever.
But we find out later that she's very traumatized from what happened in the South, and we don't know what that is yet in the first episode. But there's many scenes where things just suddenly cut to being red and creepy, and it's like a possessed version of herself is viewing whatever is, or I think
it's supposed to be her trauma. Like it's seeing red. Like that's what happens when people get so angry that blood rushes to their head and they lose rational control of their mind. So I think that's what it's supposed to represent.
There's that. But there's also, that's a good segue into the intro where it's like the intro title sequence.
Yeah.
Because that's also why red is so prominent, because there's something that was known as the red line, which was very, very well represented in the title sequence. It's a really cool like graphic design 2D animated intro thing with like
well, I think the closest thing
shots from the 50s.
the closest comparison that you could probably give that people wouldn't recognize is the intro to Monsters Inc.
I was just going to say
it's actually done kind of like that because it's the same sort of stuff.
doors, like the doors, like very it's drawn, except it's like a creepy version because it's all black and red.
And it's the map of California, and they're drawing up the lines in the map, which is really cool.
So it's because it shows what the red line is, which is known as redlining, which is basically a discriminatory practice in which services are withheld from potential customers who reside in neighborhoods classified as hazardous, in quotations, to investment. Those neighborhoods have high numbers of racial and ethnic minorities and low-income residents. They are often denied credit, insurance, healthcare, and development of food deserts often happen there. There is also purposeful limitations of resources near these areas. So it was basically just extreme racial discrimination to whomever was on the wrong side of the red line, basically. And we see them drive into Compton. So that is a very prime example of a neighborhood that slowly became a red zone. It's like it just blows my mind that even happened. That
I was
they would
completely
zone.
Yeah, I was so surprised by the fact that Compton was an all-white neighborhood at one point, because growing up, through our entire lives, that was considered like the neighborhood where, African Americans lived. And, but I was like, oh, it was actually the complete reverse at one point. And well, that's the whole point of the show, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there's just so much. Even in like the first introduction bit, I was just like, oh my God, just there's so much being tossed at you. Just like visual representations of what the show was laying out before you. But even if you don't know the history of redlining or whatever, it still gives a very good depiction, I guess, of what's to come. It's still
well, I didn't know I'm very ignorant to the history of all of this. And so, I was very surprised by what I learned over watching the show. And just, the song they use where it's like, everyone be happy. And it's played at a normal speed as they're driving through the city. And it seems like everything's good. And then as they slowly start to pull into the neighborhood, and it immediately starts to kind of slow down at a gradual pace. They slow the song down more and more as more of the neighbors see them. And it's so terrifying seeing just this white guy watering his lawn and just like watching them drive past.
Oh my
and you're
God.
Like, oh God, like what the hell? And then just
so creepy.
It's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers almost.
Yes.
Like everyone just starts to look at them, and it's just like you're just waiting for them to go. Ah!
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good reference, because it did feel like that. And it was so sad because you'd see I forget what the other sister's name is.
She's from Us, though. That's all I know. That's all I think of her. She's
the they're both
from
really
Us.
Good.
Yeah, the cast is amazing. I really like
so good. But yeah, you see Gracie, the little girl, and her older sister. It was so cute because one of them just like taps him on the shoulder and like, oh look, it's so pretty here. And then Gracie's just like gives like a thumbs up. It's like, oh no.
I know, there's like such cute little kids. It's like, hey, you just like, why do they have to be in this horrible situation?
It was just so adorable. She's just like, yeah, thumbs up, this looks rad.
Yeah, they do a really good job of kind of making them feel like proper kids too. And you can tell that their parents like really try to keep them, away from all the horrors of the real world. And, it's just portrayed so nicely.
I will say too, like the Emersons. Is that what?
Emirates?
I wrote it down. Emery. There we go. Emery. The Emerys. Their family life feels much more rich and loving than any of the families in this neighborhood. Like you just see how shallow and empty their lives are. That all they have is to obsess over the new Black family that moved into the neighborhood, whereas the Emerys are living their lives. Henry and Lucky love each other, and they show it to each other, and the kids have a great relationship with their parents. And then you just see all the other families are just like scheming, and like they have these empty relationships with each other where there's like fake smiles, and it's just like,
I think that's a whole subject on its own, is fake smiles. That is like the main actress who plays the alpha racist is Allison Betsy, which is a perfect name. And actually, that makes sense. She's in Blue when you first meet her too, like Betsy and Wilma from the Flintstones. But she's Allison Pill is her name, and she's such a great actress. I've seen her in other HBO shows. And she's usually like generally a nice person. Sometimes she's a ball buster, but I've never seen her as like a outright villain. And she does a very good job of just having this like Oh, she must have practiced her smile so much because she has so many different versions of what almost looks exactly the same, but she like kind of has this great
she does a
twitch,
great job.
and her eyes just have this like empty voidness to it of like she does not care about anybody else. She is
sorry. Yeah.
No. Go ahead.
When they first move in, I'll just set the scene a little bit. So they're driving in and this song is playing and it's like this happy song and it's slowly and it's slowly like slowing down and getting creepy, and they're driving through this lane of perfectly mowed green lawns, like the epitome of suburbia in the 50s, with all of these
magazine cover.
It's a magazine cover. There's like a guy watering his grass. There's housewives like gossiping on one woman's lawn, and they're just driving through. And
was the one lady with the grocery bags, and she's like getting them out of her trunk, and then she just sees them in the car, and she just grabs her grocery, sprints, she just bolts for the house. Like,
and so the Emerys are driving through, seeing this, like, what the fuck? What's wrong with these people? And they drive up onto on their driveway, and they get out, and Lucky gets out of the car and just looks across the street, and she sees this like horde of
a gaggle of housewives.
A gaggle of housewives, and they're all in their like their housewife dresses,
pearls,
their housewife hair, and like they're just standing there just staring at them with like these wide eyes. And Lucky can't even do anything, but the husband comes over and like waves, and that's when Bets does like the slow like single hand raise, and she just like, her eyes don't move, but she has like the fakest smile just like grows on her face. She doesn't wave her hand, she just stares with her hand raised, and I'm like, that was the perfect acting choice for that moment.
Oh my god,
so good.
It's like so like
creepy.
Her own like evil queen wave.
So good.
And she aggressively smokes cigarettes through most of the episode as well.
Yeah. So they go inside, and I'll just say something too about the realtor, which she seemed like the only nice person so far in this neighborhood, whom all the housewives hate for some reason, because she had to sell this house under property value. So they're just, all the other housewives are like, or I guess specifically Bets comes over and is like, oh, you finally sold it, did you? Oh, little. And
she just whispers under her breath, like, you bitch.
It was great because the realtor is like, oh, for fuck's sake. So she like gets up and she has to deal with her. And she's like, oh, is there any clues about who's moving in? It's like, well, there's 2 new daughters. There you go. That's all you're getting from me. And then, the family moves in, and the whole neighborhood is horrified. And anyway, so now this realtor is bringing them through the house, showing them all their bedrooms and all that. And they're in love with the house. It's just like quite a nice 50s style house.
Well, and it shows that like they're pretty well off people, like clearly. Like,
the husband is super intelligent. He's an engineer, and the wife is a teacher.
These are competent, intelligent people.
Much more competent than anyone else in this neighborhood.
Well, and it just shows like, all these bored housewives that are just these ninnies that have no brains to rub together in their head, and they just come up with these absurd ideas based off of no facts whatsoever.
Oh my god, exactly. But Gracie follows their dog Sergeant, which I love that name for their dog. Sarge follows Sarge because he just bolts it towards the store and starts barking, and Gracie opens it and just discovers that there's a basement.
I just thought of something though, for like the fact that the dog's name is Sergeant. I wonder if that's like a hint at the backstory of the husband, where he may have been in World War II, and maybe that's why he's an engineer, and he has a dog named after a military rank. So I'm wondering if maybe, I don't know if they ever talked about that in the show. I can't remember, but I'm wondering because I was curious. I'm like, how did he get to go to school? Because, being in the South, you wouldn't probably be allowed to go to school. So I feel it's probably a hint that he came from the military. And he's also very clean cut and like together.
Very.
So yeah.
They're all very put together. Like I was throughout the entire first episode, I was just admiring the wives and the husbands like fashion senses. I was like, guys are so much cooler than anyone else in this neighborhood.
It's like the poise that they have. Awesome. It's just so much more admirable.
Just they looked so much classier, very classy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's how they discover that there's this creepy ass basement.
Yeah, that's the first hint at something maybe beyond the veil.
Yeah, it was like, okay, that basement looks creepy as all hell.
Or cliche number 2, creepy basement.
Yes. And then another creepy part. This is basically the end of day 1, I believe. But Lucky, at the end of day 1, sorry, Lucky sees the what's the word? The contract for the house, and it says no persons of colored blood are permitted to reside in this neighborhood. And the realtor assures her that that is no longer passable or legal in this county or something, or
so it wasn't enforceable
region.
So they could still put it on the contracts, but legally you can't like phone the cops on them and get them evicted.
Okay.
But you can still make them uncomfortable as shit.
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of the cops wouldn't do anything.
Well, I won't spoil anything, but that is touched upon in the show.
Right.
Let's say the LAPD has a very long history of not being very supportive of the minority communities.
Yeah. Yes. I think most police departments, to be honest.
Well, there's those famous LA riots back in like the 80s where they like were really, I was like, oh God.
Yeah. God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's day 1.
Many things come up in this show that it like the whole premise, it's like it's very the way they do it, it's so smart because it's like everything makes you uncomfortable, and that's the point of it. That's the point of it. And it's like,
well, and it's so it's great. So at the end of day 1, kind of once they finish the paperwork, they decide to sign it, and throughout the day they just keep cutting to the outside of the house, and you see more people gathering. There's more housewives, and then once night falls, all the freaking redneck husbands come, and they're all just drinking beers and smoking and like just all in the street, all in front of their house, and like they're beside their house with a fence by the fences, and you feel this like oppression of these people who hate them, just literally closing them off from the rest of the world.
It's just bizarre to me. It's like they're not treating them like people. It's like they can't even fathom that they would have their own lives, their own perception of reality, or what's the word? Have their own perspectives, and they can look out and feel this oppression coming in. It's like, no, they are other people that do not belong here. So it's like they don't matter. So we have every right to just stand here and make them uncomfortable because who gives a shit? And it's
that's probably the aspect of the show that like boils my blood the most, is like their complete like justification of all the terrible things they do. They just feel so empowered to do these things because it's their land and their homes, and they believe that they are fighting for a righteous cause to keep people safe. But they don't even know these people. They just assume because they look the way they look that they're going to kill people.
And the Emerys have done absolutely nothing to anybody. All they've done is just moved in, and they've been silent, absolutely silent. And it's just like, I don't know what gives you guys the right to feel like you're able to just terrorize this family without ever even talking to them. It makes me mad, and that it keeps getting worse throughout throughout the episode and through the series.
Keep getting worse throughout the show. Yeah. I tell you.
So yeah, that was the end of day 1. And then day 2, we get sort of more of an inside look onto the housewives. So we see Bets, the ringleader of the housewives, enlists all the housewives to all sit outside the Emery's houses and the Emery's house and blast radios all day long, staring in their windows.
Well, and it's really interesting, just the dynamic of like Bets compared to the other housewives, because like the other housewives, they're like ignorantly following along, and I don't think they're like they're being pointedly hateful. They're just ignorantly hateful, and they're going along really, with they're like the people in Nazi Germany that just did nothing, and they were fine with whatever happened. They just didn't want to get into trouble themselves. They wanted to belong, and but like Betsy, you could tell that she's smarter, and she knows what she's doing and why she's doing it, and she's doing it for like hateful reasons. Like,
you see later in this episode. Bets and her husband Clark, because it's interesting. I think Clark also doesn't really care that much, and
he's probably the one that like when the scene when they're talking with all the husband, he is like the most. He actually acknowledges that they have real children. He's like, there's children in the house, and the other husbands don't even acknowledge them as children.
They say so many racist things that just
that part of the show alone, if you trigger based off of just any sort of racial wording, do not the show will be difficult for you to watch.
It is it's just hard to wrap my brain around it, especially now in this day and age. It's just like, oh God. Yeah. It's really hard to watch. But there's a scene later on where Bets and the other housewives are getting together, and they are talking about like, oh well, what kind of shit can we do? And there's Midge, which is supposed to be like Bets's right hand lady,
theoretically best friend,
and Bets is calling her out. It's like, it just doesn't seem like you care. It just doesn't seem like you give a shit that these people are like terrorizing our neighborhood. And Midge, you can just sort of see in her eyes, just like she doesn't really want to terrorize these people, but she's just kind of going along with it because she feels like she has to.
Mm-hmm. She doesn't feel threatened by them in the same way that like their existence threatens Betty. Like her idea of someone who may think differently than them. Like, I think that's almost part of it, is like she might not be able to control these people because they're so outside of what she's used to. She wouldn't know how to manipulate them, or maybe they wouldn't be manipulated as easily, and they wouldn't be compared to Betsy and all the rest of the ninnies that haven't had to go through anything in their life. So it's just these people that haven't had to experience any hardships in life, and they're just hollow housewives. And then these people come along that probably come because they have that very pointed line that she says, it's like, oh, they just look so tired when they came here. And it's like, they came from somewhere worse. They always come from somewhere worse. And it's like, oh, that statement is just, so loaded. And
it was horrific. And then, so the other housewives are like, well, then how do we get them to leave if they came from someplace worse? And Bets is like, well, we're going to have to make this place worse than where they came from. And I'm just like, fuck, man.
Yeah.
There's so much to unload in that statement alone.
Yeah.
To unpack in that statement alone. It's just like,
there's
just so many things wrong with everything you guys are saying.
It sets up it sets up the rest of the show and all of her actions so much, like well in the first episode. Like you get such a good idea of, what Betsy is like and how she's going to kind of go about doing the things that she's going to do. And it's just this constant escalation of the things that she does.
Lovely.
Do you want to talk about the first thing that she does?
Well, we still have to get through day 2.
Oh, I thought at the beginning of day 2 is when they start, where they set up all their lawn chairs and stuff. Or is that day 3?
That was actually the end of day one.
The radio?
The radio, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, we should definitely.
No, that was the start of day two. Sorry, the start of day two. Yeah, I think I already said that. They all sat outside and blasting their radios, and yeah, there's like a scene where you're inside the Emery's house, and the one daughter is just like, "Are they going to do this all day?" And it's the mom's just like, "Well, they're just serenading us. Isn't that nice of them?" And Gracie's like, "Isn't it?"
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's always this ongoing thing about her proper grammar. And like the mom's kind of correcting her like grammar.
So cute. Oh, I just can't get over it.
That is an adorable little child. Just the way she
Isn't
talks.
It?
Like, well, and the song they play is like something like Congo in the Bongo or Bongo in the Congo.
Oh.
And it's like, if you listen to the words, it definitely has meaning and why they chose it, because they're singing about the jungle and bongos. And that specific song playing is like, okay, yeah, you definitely picked that one.
And there was like one of the more stupid housewives, I guess I'll say. One of the side housewives that doesn't really have much of a character.
The betas, yeah.
Yeah. She's like, I thought colored people liked music. Like, why are you doing this? They like music.
And they're too stupid to even understand what they're doing. Like,
exactly. That's what that shows. and Betsy is just like, well, they do, but not like this. This is enough to make someone go crazy. It's just like, well, obviously, no one's going to want to listen to people play 50 songs at different times. So it's all just chaos.
Such assholes.
Such assholes. Yeah. But yeah, so that's the first thing they do. And it's so petty. Like it just seems like who would even think to do that? It's so absurd. And they have their little like pitchers of juice or whatever that they slam down next to them. So they're like drinking it throughout the day to stay hydrated.
And it just goes to show how empty their lives are, that they can spend all day focused on this. Like the whole neighborhood can just take a whole day and just camp out in front of someone's house and just blast music to try to infuriate them. It's like, don't you have anything better to do with your time? Anything.
The only thing I thought was just like, oh, those bitches are getting sun cancer because none of them are wearing sunscreen.
If you get melanoma, you pale ass bitch.
Yeah, they all are, because no one wore sunscreen in the 50s.
Good. And they're probably going to have lung cancer because they smoke so much.
Oh, yeah. That's all I was thinking was like, bitches are going to get cancer. I know this is fictional, but...
You really hate these. They're very good at making you hate these people. Like like Alison Pill. Like, it's so funny because she always plays all these like, she plays so many like quirky kind of like lovable characters in shows, and she's just this nightmare.
I was going to say too, they do a very good job of making her look like a 50s housewife, but also look like someone you want to hate.
Yes, just
like they give her like, they just exaggerate certain features on her face, like give her like these little beady little eyes, like they just, because in a lot of shows you can exaggerate features to make them look a little bit more beautiful, pronounced and stuff. So they made sure, I noticed, to like put basically zero makeup on her eyes, and so it just kind of like makes them look smaller, and then the rest of her face is like very pale.
She keeps her eyelids wide too. She's so good at like, I can't even widen my eyelids as much.
They made her super blonde, so her eyebrows are like basically non-existent. So that kind of also exaggerates the like little beady eye look. And I'm like, I don't know if that was on purpose. Maybe I was just making it up in my head, but it makes me feel like they're going out of their way to kind of make her just kind of feel like a character you don't want to like.
Well, I would totally believe all of that, because without realizing it, you're looking at her eyes all the time.
Oh yeah.
Because she's constantly, you can't trust what her mouth is doing, because that's a lie. And so like the only honesty you ever see is in her eyes. And it's just normally hatred or pettiness. And like the way she talks to her friends is like, they're just like cattle to her. Like they're like, appendages of herself, essentially. They aren't real people. And like even the way she talks to her husband is pretty like you could tell that it's interesting because she's smarter than most housewives. And if she grew up in the modern day, she probably would have just gone to university and expanded her horizons. But because she's stuck in this like little world, she's actually just this hateful asshole. And so it's like she hates her own life too, which is an interesting contrast. It doesn't make you feel any sort of sympathy for her, but it actually makes me filled with joy that her life is so miserable.
I know. Well, it also brings up another point too, where it's just so horrific that a lot of the education that white people in those areas got was just super racist, like extremely racist, because you can see just everyone is just blindly believing the same thing without questioning it. And it just, it makes you think just how awful it would be. Like it's just unknowingly you're brought up with these beliefs that nobody questions. And it's like people, like you're saying, under the Nazi regime, it's like there's those people that are smart enough to know this is wrong, but they're not doing anything about it to change it, you know? Sort of like that. That's what it feels like a lot of them are. They're just kind of like these sheep that know that this is not morally right, but they're not doing anything to fix it. They're not changing anything.
There's that famous quote, it's like the only thing that evil needs to succeed is for good people to do nothing.
Oh, there you go. That's like the perfect quote for this whole show.
Yeah.
Feels like.
Yeah. It's just like, there are people that can help this poor family, but nobody does. You're just sitting there watching them like, somebody help them, please.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So yeah, then it goes to the husband. Does it show the husband at work on day 2? Is that because it kind of shows like a day?
Okay, so we're almost there. What happens next? It's not like super important, but it just further paints the very rich picture of racism throughout this whole series.
History of racism.
The mom, well, first I'll just say, like, the kids are getting ready for school, or the one daughter's getting ready for school because Gracie isn't quite old enough to go to kindergarten yet, or kindergarten didn't start or something.
Yeah, she said it's going to start in 2 weeks. So it's
something
later.
like that. Yeah. So Lucky, she says this to her daughter. She's like, I'm only going to do this once. Now get ready. Let's go. And she walks them out to the bus stop, and she's just like powering through, like just walking with purpose to this bus stop, and just stands there and is waiting for the bus with them. And all these just like white teenagers are just staring at them. And Lucky just looks over and is like, can I help you with something?
Oh,
nope. Yeah. Okay.
Her tone is perfect in that moment.
Like, you girls need anything? I think that's what she says.
Well, she's like, they establish her as such a tough woman too, because there's that scene in the day 1 where she's loading her handgun, like the husband's sleeping. It's just like she's got him fucking going down without a fight.
And I like how the husband handled that scene too, because it was like he completely understands where she's coming from, but he's just like, we're not running. We are not running anymore. And she's just like, okay, you're right. We're not running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we're gonna fight through this. And it's, oh my God. Yeah.
And that's pretty much
the
premise of the entire show is fighting through it.
But yeah, so then after that bus stop scene, then we get to when Henry goes to work, and oh my God, I just get so angry throughout this whole series, throughout this whole episode. But the receptionist is this blonde, white, idiotic receptionist, and she's you just want to strangle her, because
they show her neck so prominently too. It almost seems intentional.
I didn't even notice that.
Well, there's like the one scene when the other African American guy comes up to him. He's like, "Oh, I'll take him from here," and it cuts to the back of her head, and she's just like scratching the side of her neck. It's like, "Oh, that would be great. I don't think I have the time for that," or something very condescending.
So she was just, it cuts to the other African-American guy, and she's like, "Oh, could you? That would be great. I'm sure I don't have time for this today." And she says it like this and like looks at him. I was like, holy fuck.
birth of sassy asshole bitches.
Oh my God. What the fuck, PayPal? Yeah, so he just gets all this attitude from this receptionist that doesn't believe that he works there, and she keeps like brushing him off and goes back to talking to like some friend or something that she has on the phone, and it's just super insulting. And he's like, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry for bothering you, even though it's like, this is your fucking job. This is your job. It's his first day. It's your job to help him, and you are on the phone with someone else.
And he's an engineer, and she's a fucking receptionist. Like, he's technically her boss. Respect. Yeah.
So then, I think he was like the janitor, the other African American guy comes by and is just like, oh, don't worry about it. I'll show you where you need to go. And then she says her super insulting line, and he leads the way. He's just like, the janitor. It's just like, you got to be careful around these parts or something like that.
Because he tells him where they moved to, and he's like, oh shit, like, you got to be careful, like, they will try to fucking kill you. Like, essentially.
Oh yeah.
He's like, when he finds out that they moved to Compton, he's like, oh God, okay, well, good luck with that.
Oh fuck, man. Yep. So yeah, he starts his first day, and when he walks in, I was to like the engineering room, I was pleasantly surprised at first, because at least like some guy just walks up to him and gives him like, here's your work you need to do, and kind of nods at him, and then he goes about his way. I was like, that was the least racist part so far. Okay. Take a break, take a breath.
He kind of treated him like a real human being for a moment.
Yeah, for a moment.
Yes, the key word.
For a moment. Yeah, and then it cuts back to the house, and we see Lucky as she walks into Gracie's room, and Gracie is just like, she's reading her book, Miss Vera Says, and she's just like, hey Mom, I learned a new song from Miss Vera, and Lucky's like, okay, I'm pretty sure this is just a school book, like I don't know how you could learn a song from this. And she's like, okay, yeah, go for it. And Gracie starts singing the Old Black Joe song, that we heard at the beginning. And Lucky is just like, where did you learn this song? But I guess before it gets to that part, it kind of intercuts with the red popping in and out of frame, where we see like Gracie suddenly like possessed. Mm-hmm. Like she looks super creepy, and she's doing
cliche. Like, number 3, creepy little child.
Creepy little child. And how this actress, like this, I don't know how old she is, like 5 to 7 or something in real life, but she nails it. Does such a good job of being creepy as fuck, and also just the cutest little girl ever. And I'm just like,
well, she just gets louder louder, and I think she starts like stomping her feet, kind of like marching.
Oh my God, there was a part where she does like this like jig thing with her hands and stomps her feet.
That's right.
And I was like, that looked CG. Like it looked like, I don't know how she did it so creepily and so like fluidly, but it looked like it was animated, because it was very creepy and it was done so well. But yeah, that was
so disturbing,
very unsettling. And then understandably, Lucky's just like, where the hell did you hear that song? What is wrong with you? And she's getting very triggered, and she ends up slapping Gracie, and then immediately hugs her, just like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But she is still trying to figure out where the heck she learned the song, and Gracie's just like, from Miss Vera.
Yeah, and
so we don't really know where she learned that song.
So that's kind of the beginning, that something is not quite right.
Something is not right.
Like, how would she possibly know that song? A very specific song that means so many terrible things to the mom.
Yeah. And then after that, we see Lucky has a keepsake box with CE inscribed on top of it, which we presume is Chester Emery, the son from the beginning of the episode. And she keeps it in like a little safe area in the basement, and that's it. That's all we see from that for now.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, that's when we cut to that scene we were describing before, where Bets is like trying to figure out how to make Compton worse with her like
her brainstorming
terrible,
crew,
housewife brigade.
well, and like the husbands are segregated in the
and the husbands are doing the same thing, and they're saying super racist shit. And then that's when the husbands decide, well, first I'll say like Clark, Bets's husband, like his idea was to just put like tax on the driveway, and it's like, oh, that should be enough to get him. It's like the other husbands are like, why would that do anything? He's like, oh, give him a flat tire, that's a pretty big inconvenience. And the other husbands are like, are you joking? Are you joking right now? That is nowhere far enough. And he's like, yeah, but they got kids, like I don't want to take it too far.
Yeah, because the one guy suggests just throwing rocks through their windows.
Yeah. And then someone suggests, like, why don't we just kill the dog? And they're like, oh, I like that idea. We'll just kill the dog.
Like, a bleached bone, like bleaching a bone and then throwing it into the yard. Just so
fucked up. And then after that scene, that's when we sort of get an idea that maybe Midge is not super into this and Clark might not be super into this. Mm-hmm. Because we do get the gist that there's at least one or two of the husbands that are super into terrorizing them, and Beth is super into terrorizing them. And on the walk home, Beth and Clark, you definitely get the gist that Clark is just like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's kind of like, he just doesn't really know what to do. He's just sort of agreeing with his wife, and Beth's just like crazed, just like, we need to make this is our land. This needs to just be ours, kind of a thing. And it's
very righteous the way she talks.
Very, very righteous. It's like, we need to make this our own again. They don't belong here. It's just so fucked. But yeah, so that's when we get insight into sort of like the housewives and the husbands, that whole scene, how that's working.
There's almost like another layer of racism and insult to how she says it's their land, because it's like, the Wild West, it was actually the Native Americans' land before yours, you asshole, until you killed them all. Like,
yes.
So it's almost like that extra level, like it takes place in California, and that's where like, the West was won. And so it's just,
that's another big part of it too, where it's just like, so many righteous white people that just take over land, and then immediately, like, all the Europeans just took over land from Native Americans. And,
it's like, hey, do you want to share it? No, we want it. Fuck you. It's like, there's a lot of land.
Nowadays, I'm seeing that it's more common to where you can go and you can look up like a restaurant or something, and they'll put underneath who owns the land, like the original Native American land. Like, I'm seeing that becoming more and more common, like especially when I lived in Vancouver, because it is there's
a lot of Aboriginal stolen land,
Aboriginal history in that area. And you can see there's actually like a map you can look up, and you can find out whose land you're actually living on, like what the tribe was originally.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So anyways, random history tangent. But so we actually end the day on the second day with a little bit of like a slight high note, where we see the Emery family is like, they've got their music on, and it actually cuts straight from seeing Bets and Clark walking down as they're like looking inside their window, and you just see Lucky just close the curtains, and now we're inside their house, and they're just listening to music. Everyone's dancing, and
they're happy.
Yeah, Henry is just like, oh, you watch. This is how I got your mother with these like dance moves, and he's like showing off his like dance moves and like lovingly dancing with Lucky, and the kids are just like dancing. It's like, Steve, this is a family.
Yeah, they don't give a shit. They just
dynamic.
want to be with their family. It's like all these other people are obsessing over like they're going to terrorize our neighborhood. It's like they're dancing inside their house.
They're dancing inside their house.
What level of terror does that give you?
And it just showed like the relationship between Bets and Clark is so cold. Like there's no love there. It's just like, this is for show. And then you cut inside and you see Henry and Livia, I think that's her real name, Livia Lucky Emery. And they're just like dancing with each other and clearly still in love. And it's like very warm compared to like the cold, depressing, like outside shit that they're doing.
Yeah. Well, I love that one scene that it happens like earlier in day one when Betsy first goes back into the house and she's smiling, and then her smile just kind of fades as she's still like holding her cigarette, and she just looks over at her wallpaper and she just sees the tiniest imperfection and she just stares at it, and like there's like just a perfect kind of like, I don't know, metaphor for like her. Yeah, just like the first crack is showing. Like,
I saw that. I think like the second time I watched it, I was like, ooh. Yes, that's a very good metaphor for her life and like,
oh my god,
everything.
And like,
because she is basically like this nasty, decrepit house that's just covered in beautiful wallpaper.
Yeah,
and it's starting to peel.
Yeah. The rot behind it, just
it's all rot. There's nothing good there.
Yeah, which also is another crossover with his house. Wallpaper portraying human emotions. I didn't think wallpaper could be that powerful of an emotional metaphor, but they nail it. Wallpaper.
They really nail it. There's a lot of metaphors throughout this whole show. It's very rich. It feels like nothing is done accidentally. It's like everything has a purpose.
Like wallpaper is almost a supporting character in the show because there's so much crazy 70s wallpaper, or like 50s wallpaper throughout. They have like, there's like so much like interesting different wallpaper in everyone's house, and it like really is like the portrayal.
I like the wallpaper in the Emery's house. Like their house has cool wallpaper, and then you see like Betts' house, and it's very much kind of like more of the granny aesthetic.
Oh, I know.
It's like the pale blue, pale pink. Yeah.
So, I would not feel comfortable in that house. It would just be like, I wouldn't want to touch anything in that house. It's like everything isn't there to be warm and welcoming to invite people in. It's there to be like observed, and don't touch it. Respect the stuff, because stuff is so important to her, because stuff represents what, she is. Like she thinks having all these things.
Just materialistic, very surface. Yeah.
Like she's fighting for her house. Like that's like, it's a fucking house. Who gives a shit? Like maybe worry more about like your family and your husband if you actually gave a shit about him. Like,
I know. Yeah. But so now we're leading into day 3, and this is in the middle of the night. Gracie wakes up because Sarge isn't on her bed. And so she wakes up and she's like, Sarge, where are you? And she gets up and there's no music. It's just dead silence. And I'm fuck. Shit's going down. And so she gets up and she walks out into the hall and just like slowly just like, Sarge, where are you? And we see this ginormous, creepy shadow sitting at the table smoking something. And at first I thought it was a dude, but there's like a bun. There's like a bun on top of its head. So it's like, okay, it's a super creepy tall lady. Don't know what it is. And it just slowly approaches Gracie and then grabs for her throat. Yeah. Then we wake up the next morning. Yay, day 3, here we go.
But the transitions are so great too, because they have like, they say day and then it's just like a tick, which is great because I think that's reference to like when you're in prison, because you scratch it into the wall. So it's almost like their prison sentence is the next 10 days. And it's, each day just gets progressively worse.
It did remind me of that too. Yeah. Carving it into the walls.
Yeah, I feel like that was very intentional choice. To not have just like numerical numbers, like a tally.
So yeah, do you have more insight on what that creepy figure was, or will it be revealed?
It will be revealed. I don't want to give away too much because that is the first reveal of it. And I'll just say the show does a very good job. It doesn't leave strings left unpulled. It will reveal everything over the course of the show. So that's why I didn't. Yeah, the strings. There we go. I didn't want to say too much because it's very intentionally vague right now. And so if I comment any more on it, I worry that I might give something away. So yeah, so it's interesting.
Yes. So this is the last and final portion of the first episode, and we only get to see the morning of day 3. Mm-hmm. But Lucky basically sees marks on Gracie's neck, and Gracie says that the lady took Sargent, the lady that choked her. Mm-hmm. And so Henry, the husband, finds Sargent dead in the basement, and his whole neck is just like spun around.
Yeah.
And after discovering what happened, Lucky is basically goes into this fit of rage and is crazed, and she runs outside with her gun and is just yelling nonsense at the neighbors. She's swearing at the whole neighborhood, and everyone is watching absolutely horrified. And the husband has to run outside and drag her back in, and that's it. That's it for the first episode. What a cliffhanger. But it was interesting how they did the audio for that part, because they really distorted her voice, and it sounded kind of like a distorted radio signal when she was yelling. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't know what it was, if it was just stylistic or if it was supposed to be more meaningful.
I know a lot of like at any time they try to show like overwhelming anger in movies, they sometimes will add like a buzzing or some sort of crackle to the person's own hearing, because it's like they're so tunnel vision that they don't hear anything anymore. They're just like, she is just full on rage mode at that point, and she's not going to listen to reasoning. Her head is just completely
full of, like, her brain is filled with blood just rushing, so it's just like, oh.
Well, and over the course of the show, and won't give anything away, you find out why she's so traumatized, and she's got a pretty good reason.
All right. Okay. So that was it. That was the first episode, and it has me hooked. So I guess at the start of this, maybe I should I guess we kind of said at the start that we're just summarizing it. Yeah. So
just talking about our, something that hopefully other people will want to watch. It's on Amazon Prime, so if you have Prime, it's already free, and it's a very good watch. You'll feel uncomfortable, but it's I would say it was one of the best like horror mini series I've watched. Out of all these new ones that have come out, I'd say this one is really stuck with me the most. It has a lot of staying power.
Excellent. I'm excited to keep watching it. And I imagine there aren't going to be many people listening that aren't interested in horror. So we're probably good.
Well, and if just for people, like if they like Get Out and Us, like the Jordan Peele movies that he's made, like it has a very similar tone to those movies. And so, give it a try if you think it might not be for you. It's worth checking out.
Yeah, I would say I wasn't like the hugest fan of Us, just from a story standpoint. It was more of a
standard kind of, and it was kind of weird by the end.
It was a little convoluted, like with just like the logic throughout that movie. I was like, okay, sure. I loved Get Out.
Yeah. It was like, it felt like a weird Twilight Zone episode. Us.
Yeah.
How does
it should have been shorter?
It's like
it should have been shorter.
Yeah.
It would have made a really interesting short.
Yeah.
But for a movie, anyways.
Yeah.
We don't need to make this the
review of Us.
The review of Us, because it's fine.
It's not about us.
Tangent forever.
It's about them. Ooh.
Oh. That's a good note to end it on.
We can't get classier than that.
Yep. So yeah, stay tuned if you're interested in hearing more about them. We'll be back next week. Next week?
Yeah.
Or the week after?
Next week after episode 2.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody. See you next time.
All right. Podcast's over.